For a driver who's built his legacy on control, precision, and almost surgical timing, Spa-Francorchamps gave him something else: chaos. It didn't arrive with fireworks or drama. It crept in silently, under grey skies and thick air, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, wasn't battling another car when it happened. He was fighting something deeper. The machine he trusted, the one designed to translate instinct into speed, refused to obey. In that split second at the edge of grip, the car didn't just slip, it turned on him. Spa has always been a circuit of legends, but also of lessons. It's the place where history is made in fractions of a second, and reputations can dissolve before the final sector. For decades, it has demanded more than just talent. It demands trust. And when that trust breaks, even for the best, the consequences are ruthless. This wasn't just a bad lap. It wasn't the kind of error you shrug off and move on from. This was a moment that fractured the narrative Ferrari was trying to write. The upgrades were supposed to change the story, but the car had other plans. Hamilton didn't lose control. He had it, until the very moment the car decided otherwise. There was no warning, no drama, just a sudden snap at the limit and a spin that left him stranded, silent, still, and far from where he belonged. And as the session moved on without him, as the rest of the field crossed the line, one of the greatest drivers in history could only watch from the shadows. What happened at Spa wasn't just a spin, it was a crack in the foundation. And behind that silence, something far more serious had begun to unravel. The spin didn't come from nowhere. Behind that single moment was a build-up of quiet tension, weeks of doubt, pressure, and risk hidden under the red paint of a Ferrari machine trying to find itself again. After the disaster in China, where both drivers were disqualified for excessive skid plank wear, Ferrari had no choice but to act. They raised the ride height to stay within the rules, but that came with a cost: less grip, less confidence in the corners. The car felt loose, unpredictable. Complaints started to rise. The drivers could feel the car fighting them, not working with them. To solve it, Ferrari brought in new suspension parts for Spa. It was a bold decision, one meant to calm the car's instability, to bring back the control Hamilton and Leclerc needed to push at the limit. But Spa wasn't the ideal place to try something untested. With the sprint format, there's barely any time to learn, adapt, or fine-tune. One practice session, straight into qualifying, straight into judgment. Still, Ferrari took the gamble. They had no real data, no long runs, just brief moments at a filming day in Mugello, moments where the rules prevented them from properly testing anything. Hamilton became the test subject in a live experiment, thrown into the deep end with a car still finding its footing. There was no room for trial and error, just one chance, and when it mattered most, the setup cracked under the pressure. This wasn't just about a spin. It was about a team searching for stability, trying to fix a problem while racing against time and expectation. Ferrari didn't just bring upgrades to Spa, they brought hope wrapped in uncertainty. And in doing so, they put one of the sport's greatest drivers behind the wheel of a machine that wasn't quite ready to be trusted. When qualifying began, Hamilton knew he had just two chances. The first lap, fast, clean, hopeful, was undone by the car's refusal to cooperate. As he approached Stavelot, the rear axle resisted his intention, snapping loose with no warning. It wasn't violent, just enough to ruin the rhythm. A slide, a correction, and the lap was lost. Time ticking. He circled back for one more shot, this time with urgency stitched into every movement. But urgency and uncertainty are a dangerous mix. As he approached the bus stop chicane, he braked late, hoping to claw something back, but the rear tyres locked under pressure, and the car spun without grace. The grip vanished like a ghost under floodlights, and suddenly, the Ferrari was backwards, motionless in the runoff. No engine roar, no fight left, just silence, and a screen that showed him sitting in 18th place. While the rest of the field completed their laps, Hamilton remained off track, alone, motionless, a champion on the outside looking in. After the spin, there were no outbursts, no excuses, just short, cold replies that said more than any long explanation could. "I spun," he said, as if the moment didn't need dressing up. "Not great," came next. spoken without emotion, but heavy with meaning. There was no anger in his voice, just a quiet frustration that sat between every word. His body language did the rest, head slightly lowered, eyes distant, looking past the cameras, past the noise. He didn't point fingers, didn't mention the setup or the upgrades. He absorbed it all with a kind of emotional discipline only experience can teach. When asked if it was a rear lockup, he answered, first time in my career. It wasn't dramatic, but it was telling. A rare moment where Hamilton admitted, without directly saying it, that even he didn't have all the answers. Massively frustrated, he added at the end. Just 3 words, but behind them sat the weight of a weekend slipping through his fingers. As the paddock searched for answers, the debate quickly turned to one question. Was it the driver or the machine? Ferrari's new suspension was supposed to fix the SF25's instability, to calm the rear and make the car easier to handle on the edge. But what it delivered at Spa was something closer to chaos. On Hamilton's flying laps, the car twitched violently under braking, the rear lockup coming not from aggression, but from something deeper, something broken in the balance. There was no grip through the apex, no forgiveness at the limit. Sky F1 analysts were quick to notice. Martin Brundle pointed out a strange, metallic thud just before the spin, something he described as unnatural, mechanical, like the car disagreeing with itself. Anthony Davidson went even further, suggesting it could have been gearbox backlash, a sign that the internals weren't sinking under load. But telemetry alone couldn't paint the full picture. The numbers showed where the spin started, but not why. That's where instinct takes over, where a driver feels the car shifting beneath them half a second before the data catches up. No blame was officially placed, but patterns began to emerge. Other drivers reported similar instability, the kind that doesn't show on screens but lives in the steering wheel and the seat. In the end, it wasn't just Hamilton who suffered. The setup cracked under tension, exposing a deeper issue Ferrari hadn't solved, an issue that turned one of the world's most reliable machines into something unpredictable, even for a master. Starting 18th in a sprint race isn't a challenge. It's a sentence. With only the top 8 finishers earning points, Lewis Hamilton was never really in the fight before the lights even went out. The narrow window for reward was already closed, and the only thing left was damage control. Meanwhile, on the other side of the garage, Charles Leclerc lined up on the second row, a stark and bitter contrast that only deepened the questions surrounding Hamilton's fate. Ferrari came into Spa hoping for a reset, a return to form after weeks of inconsistency. But what they got was a shake in the foundation, compromised geometry, fragile confidence, and a setup that may have sacrificed speed for safety without solving either. The emotional toll is just as heavy as the points loss. Momentum, once slipping, now feels stalled entirely. The trust between driver and machine, delicate at the best of times, now feels bruised, if not broken. As the team looks ahead to Saturday's Grand Prix qualifying and the Sunday race, the question isn't just whether Hamilton can rebound, it's whether Ferrari will have the courage to abandon what clearly isn't working. The upgrades were meant to fix a flaw, but in trying to solve one problem, they may have uncovered another. But frustration has never been the end of the story for Lewis Hamilton. It's where the story usually starts to turn. For a man who's built his legacy on overcoming chaos, this weekend was just one battle in a longer war. Spa wrote one brutal page, one where the machine turned against its master, where instinct was overruled by instability, and where a champion was forced to watch instead of fight. But tomorrow offers something different. A new session, a new chance. And if history has taught us anything, it's that Hamilton never lets frustration sit still. It burns, it sharpens, it becomes fuel. He didn't need a speech to make that clear. Just 2 phrases, short and sharp, still echoing through the paddock. I spun. I'm massively frustrated. Words that didn't ask for sympathy, only understanding. The comeback arc hasn't started yet, but when it does, this will be the silence it rises from.